Today we're going to be looking at Manic Panic in the color Electric Tiger Lily. So first thing you may notice is that my swatches are labeled 1 through 12. I just want to say that is not synonymous with hair levels. I do different video clips and pictures and such near the end of the video, so the numbers just help us keep track of each swatch. Also, these are human hair swatches, but they are not virgin hair. So they've all been chemically colored, bleached, or treated at some point in their existence. So to start, I will take the dye directly from the container and I will apply it to the top of each swatch. And then some people do like to dilute their dyes, so then I will do a diluted version at the bottom of each swatch. Please keep in mind everyone's hair is different, which means everyone's hair will take colors differently. Plus different screens and monitors and such can make colors look different, so please just use my video as a reference for how this could possibly maybe turn out for you. For the diluted section, we're going to do a 2-to-1 ratio. So that's going to be 1 part of our color to 2 parts of our diluter. Now, if you're not really sure what a diluter is, the quick, simple, easy answer I like to give is that it's something that lightens the color of a semi-permanent dye. Now, usually each brand will sell their own version of a diluter, but to keep consistency between all of my videos, I always just used a plain white conditioner as my diluter. Alright, I'm going to let these sit for about 3 hours so that the color can really fully absorb. I will then rinse it out, and when it's dry, I will meet you back here and we'll do some comparisons. So overall, I would say this is probably a color that's going to be a little bit better for lighter hair versus darker hair. Now, I do like to remind everyone that my hair, again, is not virgin. Virgin hair tends to struggle to take semi-permanent color, and even if it does take semi-permanent color, sometimes it will still just wash out really quickly. And doing that with colors that are meant for lighter hair will probably be even more difficult to achieve if your hair is virgin. So number 1 was originally green. I do see a difference on the top half versus the bottom half. I think the bottom half's undertone leans a little bit more yellowy. This orange has a lot of yellow in it. I wouldn't say that the top necessarily covered the green. There's still a very, very intense green undertone. I think the orange almost gave it like a close to a mossy green, but maybe a little bit warmer in undertone. 2 was the gray. Now, usually that swatch tends to lean a little bit more cool toned versus my brighter swatches, and I think orange is one of those things. I don't know if you can really make that a cool toned. So the bottom looks like a very almost like green undertoned yellow, and then the top is more orange for sure compared to the bottom, but definitely not as bright. Still very yellow in undertone, but not as much. It's very muted. And that's another thing I will say. I've kind of been mentioning in my videos more frequently. Usually warm undertones reflect light better than cool undertones. So they all will probably appear a little bit brighter than they did before, but especially on 3, 5, 6, and 7, because those were more brown. Adding the warm undertone kind of almost brightens it, even though you're not bleaching or anything, to actually lighten the color of the hair. So the 3 was the natural red. I actually think I see a difference in both the top and the bottom. The bottom obviously looks a little bit closer to how it did before, but the yellowy tones in the dye just kind of brightened it up again, like I just said. Essentially took some of those more orangey tones and brought them out, which is definitely still true on the top as well, but the top leans a little bit more red looking. 4 was the soft black. I personally don't see a difference this time. Sometimes soft black, if it's not virgin hair, will take a slight undertone difference when you color it, but I don't really see a difference personally on the number 4. Now 5 and 6 I'd say are both still relatively brown. I mean 7 too. 7 I do see a lot more of the orange than I do on number 6 and especially in number 5. But again, I think adding the warm undertones did make it to look like a slightly brighter, lighter brown. Definitely changed the undertones to be warmer as well, which is more noticeable on the top than it is on the bottom, but on number 6 I do see a difference as well. I would say that's a similar idea with number 7 on the diluted section, but on the direct dye section, I see much more orange coming through. And then as the swatches get lighter, the orange also gets lighter as well. Now it does say on the container that this is a UV reactive color, so I was actually expecting this to be a little bit more neon than it turned out for me. The color theory I was just talking about with hair looking brighter when it's warmer undertones even is true with how hair bleaches. So if you have hair that bleaches more warm, like more yellowy, there's a really good chance that this color will look even brighter on you than it looks on my swatches. My swatches, they're not super neutral, but they are more neutral than most people's hair naturally is when you bleach it. So keep that in mind. It definitely looks the brightest on the number 11, which is the platinum blonde, which definitely makes sense. And interestingly enough, the toned swatch I think actually looks pretty similar to the number 10. Usually it kind of looks in between like 11 and 2, but this time it leans a little bit closer to 10, probably because it wasn't super gray in undertone beforehand. And like I said before, this is a very yellowy undertoned orange. So for me, it's not turning as red on the darker swatches as some oranges might, but that is still a possibility for some people's hair because I feel like number 9 almost has a slightly more red look compared to number 8. So your hair can definitely change that, but it being more yellow in undertone, you're less likely to get that kind of look if you're not doing it on super bright blonde hair. And I know I mentioned it's UV reactive. I am going to take a picture of that and put it near the end of the video. So if you're curious about that, it'll be in here as well. But first I wanted to look at comparisons. So this type of orange is actually not super common in my collection, but luckily I do have some comparisons now that we can look at. So I think I want to do it where I'm going to do the least similar one first, and then the one after will be more similar. So our slightly less similar one will be Punky color in the color Flame. This is comparable to number 12, comparable to number 11. This is comparable to number 10 and number 9. So for a while, my Punky color Flame was the most yellowy undertone. What the hell? So for a while, my Punky color Flame was the most bright and yellow undertone orange that I have. I do have Manic Panic in the color Psychedelic Sunset. That one is much darker, even though it does lean a little bit more on the yellow side. But in comparison, I would say that the Flame actually leans just a little less yellow. I think it's a little more apparent in the diluted section, which, by the way, I used to do different numbers and ratio systems and stuff with my hair. So this is a diluted section and this is a diluted section. In the top will be the direct dye portion here. But regardless, while this is still quite yellow leaning compared to a lot of oranges I have, the Electric Tiger Lily is going to be even more yellow undertoned in comparison. And then my more similar comparison is going to be Lunar Tides in the color Solar Flare. This is comparable to number 12, number 11, number 10, and number 9. Okay, so it's kind of looking to me like the Electric Tiger Lily might even be a little more yellow in undertone compared to that, because the diluted swatch looks very yellow even compared to this one. But also, hopefully you can see what I mean when I say that the Electric Tiger Lily isn't quite as bright as I was expecting it to be. It's not marketed as a neon, so I'm not really sure why I was thinking that. I guess I was assuming because it's UV reactive that it would also be really bright. That's not necessarily true. The Solar Flare definitely looks a little bit brighter, and because it seems to be a little more saturated, I think if you have slightly darker hair, slightly darker than blonde, I would say the Solar Flare might turn out a little better on you, because for my swatches, it just looks a little more bright on the 9, like you can see it a little bit better. So as usual, I always say do a strand test. But if you are someone who wants an orange that's not going to be as bright as some other oranges are, this might be a good option for you, especially if you like the UV idea. You just don't want it to be a neon. Just again, be careful. If your hair is very yellow, when you bleach it, it could be much brighter than it looks on my swatches. Alright, so now I would like to get into our before and after clips. Those, as well as everything past this point, except for the UV light, are going to be done in natural lighting. Also, if the before and after clips look kind of different from each other, I do have to film these on different days, so my lighting environment does change. In case anything looks off, I just wanted to mention that. I hope my video helped. If you have a request, I do have a link below to a Google form you can fill out. Just remember, I only do brands that do not test on animals. Thank you so very, very, very much to my patrons, and thank you so very much for watching, and I hope to see you in my next video.